Live from Citizen TV, this is The Explainer with Yvonne Okwara.
Yula Nzale is our sign language interpreter. Now, senior officials in the office of the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua have today been grilled by the Serious Crimes Unit officers over their alleged links to the sponsoring of goons during the anti-government protests. Citizen TV has learned that the officers conducted the grilling at the Deputy President's Karen residence, as it also emerges that some members of Parliament have been lined up for questioning over financing the protests. Stephen Leto starts off our bulletin.
Trouble in paradise. For the better part of Tuesday, sleuths from the Serious Crimes Unit camped at the Deputy President's current office that doubles up as his official residence. Serious Crimes Unit officers questioned 3 top officials at the office of the Deputy President, where they recorded statements as part of ongoing investigations targeting individuals suspected of sponsoring goons during the Gen Z protests. The Serious Crimes Unit, housed at the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, headquartered in Kiambu Road, have also summoned allies of DP Rigathi Gachagua for grilling. 2 lawmakers suspected to have been part of the ring of individuals who directly or indirectly had a hand in the financing goons during the Gen Z protest will also be questioned. More MPs are said to be on the SAU radar, as well as 1 former governor, all required to record statements over the events that led to unprecedented invasions of Parliament. There is no formal evidence presented over their involvement in the protests. The probe on the officials at DP Gachagua's office comes in the wake of claims of an impending impeachment of the Deputy President. Nyeri Governor Mutahi Kahiga warning those behind the scheme to bring it on.
Where an impeachment motion is being considered against the Deputy President, I would want to make it very, very clear that that is an affront towards the mountain. And it is really an attack on us as a people. And we will not take it lying, but it has its consequences. Whoever feels that that is the way to go, we kindly tell them, bring it on. We will deal with it when the time comes.
Githunguri MP Gathoni wa Mushomba, who took a rage to X saying, quote, "Someone thinks bringing a tribal card against the DP and leaders of Mount Kenya will diffuse the rot in Kenya Kwanza government, as highlighted by the protesters. Presenting an impeachment against DP Gachagua is a decoy to shift the attention." Stephen Leto, Citizen TV.
Now, Kenya is set to have her first female Attorney General if Parliament approves the nomination of Senior Counsel Dorcas Agig Oduor by President William Ruto. In making further changes to his cabinet, President William Ruto also nominated Beatrice Askul Moe as the Cabinet Secretary for East African Community Affairs and Regional Development. And as Seth Olale reports, the names of the 2 nominees have already been forwarded to Parliament ahead of the vetting exercise, which commences Thursday at Parliament buildings.
Counsel Dorcas Agig Oduor is on the brink of becoming Kenya's first woman Attorney General if the National Assembly approves her nomination by President William Ruto. Dorcas, who is currently serving as a Secretary of Public Prosecutions at the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya with a vast legal practice of over 30 years in the public sector. Oduor, who previously served as Deputy Director Public Prosecutions and the Deputy Chief State Counsel at the then Office of the Attorney General, holds a Masters of Arts in International Conflict Management from the University of Nairobi, a Bachelor of Laws degree from the University of Nairobi, and a Diploma in Law from the Kenya School of Law. Beatrice Askul Moe completes President William Ruto's cabinet lineup after being nominated for appointment as the Cabinet Secretary for East African Community Affairs and Regional Development. Before her nomination, Askul served as a county executive committee member in charge of water, irrigation, agriculture and land reclamation for the Turkana County government. The social scientist and consultant was previously the chairperson of the technical committee of the Rift Valley Water Services Board. Askul, who was an official of the ODM National Elections Board, holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in Social Sciences from the Catholic University of Eastern Africa. The names of the latest entrants to cabinet, Dorcas Agik Oduor and Beatrice Askul Moe, have already been forwarded to Parliament ahead of the vetting exercise which kicks off on Thursday at Parliament buildings, ending speculations that the two initially vacant positions were a preserve of Azimio's other affiliate parties following President William Ruto's handshake with Raila Odinga. The president's new look cabinet reconstituted at full capacity, 22, with no reduction in numbers, despite the fact that the constitution allows a minimum of 14 and a maximum of 22 cabinet secretaries. Seth Olale, Citizen TV.
Now, the process of constituting the IEBC selection panel has run into some trouble, with the National Liberal Party's nominee to the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission selection panel, Augustus Mully, now threatening to take legal action against the Azimio coalition should the Parliamentary Service Commission replace him with Wiper Party's ambassador, Dr. Koki Mully. The National Liberal Party leader accusing Azimio Secretary General Jeanette Mohammed and Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka of allegedly shortchanging and hijacking the political party's liaison committee mandate by replacing his name.
This election was not about Azimio or Kenya Kwanza. It was about PPLC. And PPLC decided they are going to choose me. I must be from a poor background. I must be new in politics. But they chose me. They decided not to go for the names that are being forced down their throats. We are talking about changing this country. The selection panel is supposed to choose men and women of integrity who will decide the future of this country. What are they showing us? What example are they showing us? After doing a fair process, free and fair process, you go and say, we are going to change that name. Who has ever heard of that? When an election has been done, if there is a dispute, there are mechanisms to resolve that. Nobody has gone to court to say the election was not free and fair. But because they think they are the owners of this country, they can say, Mully out, Dr. Koki in.
Right now, the special task force that investigated the Shakahola massacre has recommended the creation of a special commission that will control the activities of religious groups in the country. The committee, led by Chair Mutava Musyimi, submitted its report to President William Ruto today and has also recommended stricter vetting for new religious groups before they are granted permits. Ode Francis now reports.
In the report presented to the President William Ruto on Tuesday in Nairobi State House, the committee, led by Mutava Musyimi, has given several recommendations which it says will help to remove cultism, corruption and promoting extremist teachings. One of those proposals is the creation of a Religious Affairs Commission, which will be registering all religious groups in Kenya, regulating groups with wrong teachings, creating a religious policy in the country, and advising the government on religious issues.
Number one is to protect our freedom of religion in Kenya, and to also make sure that that freedom is accompanied by protection from those who want to abuse religion for other reasons.
The commission will have a chairman appointed by the President, Attorney General, representative of the Union of Evangelistic Organizations, representative of the Union of Churches in NCCK, representative of Catholic priests, representatives of the Supreme Council of Muslims in the country, and representative of the Hindu Council in the country.
We will be taking the next steps in making sure that the good work you have done so far translates into what will do two very important things for us. Number one is to protect our freedom of religion in Kenya, and to also make sure that that freedom is accompanied by protection from those who want to abuse religion for other reasons.
The other recommendations are the creations of the Office of the Registrar of Religious Groups and also the creation of a court to resolve conflicts of religious groups. The task force has recommended tightening of the registration of worship groups, including the existence of a special panel to review registration requests involving local chiefs and elders in the process. The report also recommends that all religious groups should be providing an account of all the monies received at the end of the year.
The next steps on the discussions on the policy framework that you have suggested, on the legal framework that you have suggested, will be informed by the broad views, perspectives, ideas, suggestions from the people of Kenya.
The task force was created after 400 people died in the Shakahola forest in Kilifi County after the controversial preacher Paul Mackenzie of the Good News International Church allegedly instructed his followers to start a fast that would eventually lead them to heaven. Odi Francis, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
Now, many victims of anti-government protests continue to endure severe suffering while seeking treatment for injuries sustained during the demonstrations, primarily gunshot wounds. This ongoing distress comes despite promises from the government to compensate them. Individuals like Peter Orandi and Peter Njoroge have shared their harrowing experiences, urgently calling for justice and financial restitution. Orandi, who was shot 5 times, and Njoroge, a shoe hawker, left handicapped after being shot in his left hand, both remain resolute in their fight for change, planning to protest again on the 8th of August. Both men are yet to see any accountability for the police officers responsible for their injuries, even though they say they can identify the perpetrators. Willie Lusige reports on the continued plight of these protest victims.
As the youth, popularly known as Gen Z, continue organizing demonstrations for August 8th, with the government seemingly hesitant to act against police who used excessive force in the recent protests, many victims of police brutality are still fighting for their lives. Young Peter Orandi vividly remembers the 20th of June, the second demonstration against the finance bill and the government. He left the house to join his fellow protesters on Kenyatta Avenue in the heart of Nairobi's central business district. But his dream of fighting for leadership changes wasn't realized, and his journey did not reach its intended destination.
As I was making my way from OTC, the bus stop, towards Kenyatta Avenue, I found protesters and police clashing up at Kenya Cinema.
As he got off the matatu, even before reaching Kenyatta Avenue, he encountered peaceful protesters who were trying to persuade the police to allow them to continue with their demonstration.
Protesters started shouting, "We want peace, we want peace." And then I thought the coast was clear. Like at that point, exactly at that point, I thought the coast was clear. I can continue.
Suddenly, gunshots ran out, with the protesters thinking it was tear gas. Peter felt something hit his leg, and he had to run to save his life.
Nimegongwa na kitu, like I just felt sudden impact on my body, and at first, the first instinct was they've shot tear gas. this thing is going to explode nikiwa hapo. So I ran and took cover.
But when he tried to get up from his hiding place to head towards Kenyatta Avenue, his legs could no longer support him. It's then that he realized that he had been shot.
I took 2 steps and I felt mguu ilikuwa weird sana, my right leg. It was a feeling I'd never felt before.
Thinking he had been hit by 1 bullet, he was rushed to the hospital by good Samaritans. It turned out that he had been hit not by 1, not by 2, not by 3, not by 4 bullets.
My surgery the next day, and they removed the bullets. There were 5.
Peter Njoroge Njenga, a shoe vendor in the Ambassador area of Nairobi CBD, is another survivor.
Hiyo siku nilikaa hapa kwa nyumba mpaka saa 7. Nikaamua kwenda kuangalia kama naweza fungua kazi yangu.
He could not open his business due to the clashes between the demonstrators and the police. He decided to wait and see if the situation will calm down. Little did he know what awaited him.
Sasa maaskari walitoka kukimbiza vijana wa Gen Z pande hiyo ya Moi Avenue. Wakakuja hapo karibu na mahali tulikuwa. Wakatuliza kwa nini ya mtaroki. Na wakaanza kulipua risasi. Ndio nilijipata nimepigwa risasi.
The police shot at him, shattering 2 fingers of his left hand. He was hospitalized at Kenyatta National Hospital and is now disabled.
Nikalazwa Kenyatta kwa wiki moja na siku 4.
These victims are angry at the government's reluctance to take action against rogue police officers, despite the high number of victims whose lives have been ruined by their brutality and who have not received any compensation.
Muda yote sijapata msaidizi ya mtu yote, najitegemea mwenyewe. Na kuna shida kweli kabisa, hata niko na shida kabisa.
They say they will join their fellow protesters on 8th of August as the government has failed to meet the demands of Kenyans, and they are angry with the newly announced cabinet. As the government continues to chant compensation and justice mantras to the victims of anti-government protests, survivors have expressed their displeasure, insisting that the government is yet to fulfill those promises. Willie Lusige, Citizen TV, Nairobi. Teachers' unions in the country are now warning of the dire consequences that will befall the education sector if the budget cuts, especially for the Teachers' Service Union, are upheld. The unions say the future of the CBC implementation and the welfare of the teachers now hangs in the balance as the TSC contends with a 10 billion shillings cut in their allocations for this financial year. Brenda Wanga reports on threats by Kupet to call for a strike if the funds are not reinstated.
The Teachers Service Commission, TSC, will have to do without 10 billion shillings for its operations this financial year as the government implements budget cuts brought about by the rejection and withdrawal of the Finance Bill 2024. And the teachers directly affected by these cuts are now firing warning shots to government to brace for industrial action if this decision is not reversed in time for the start of the 3rd term of learning.
The teachers of Kenya and Kupet as an institution has no time to bear this anymore, and therefore the looming teacher strike must be the only remedy to this government insensitivity to the challenges facing education subsector, and most so to the welfare of teachers and to the learners of this country.
The TSC budget cuts will leave the Commission with gaps in the implementation of the second phase of the 2021-2025 collective bargaining agreement to the tune of 10 billion shillings, training of teachers, especially those implementing the CBC curriculum, to the tune of 262 million shillings, while its general operations and maintenance costs will be less than 18 million shillings. Already the impact of these cuts have been reflected on the teachers' pay slips.
Teachers have so far received their July payments without their deserved increment, which were already negotiated, signed and recognized by the Labor and Employment Court.
Indeed, teachers, today I speak, are demoralized a lot, having been paid a paltry 9.5% in the CBA last year, which was then given in phases, and phase 1 was paid in July last year. And the second phase was due for this year, and it is since missing.
The teachers say the government cannot be allowed to go back on its own word and commitment.
And therefore, there should be no any other excuse that the second phase of this CBA will not be paid. So as a union, we are saying that the teachers should be given their right, irrespective of which bill failed to pass through Parliament.
The teachers' unions also decry the impact of the cuts on staffing of teachers. They promise to absorb 46,000 intern teachers permanently and to employ 20,000.
And where the teacher deficit currently stands at 87,000. So you can see the kind of problem we are in. This pressure is on teachers.
The unions want the government to find ways of addressing the gaps in the TSC budgets and to do it fast to avert what they now term as a looming crisis.
Forever. Solidarity. Forever.
Brenda Wanga, Citizen TV.
Thousands of Kenyans will now wait longer to access identification cards after the High Court once again halted the printing of the third-generation ID cards. In a spot check by Citizen TV across various counties, Kenyans flocked to Huduma Center offices seeking redress on the way forward as it emerged that young people are missing out on crucial government services. Laura Tieno now reports on the mounting anxiety among the youthful population due to the ping-pong of the legality of Maisha number.
At the Huduma Center office in Kisii, hundreds of young people have turned up seeking identification cards. Some visibly wary after months of waiting for the all-important document. A scenario replicated in many Huduma centers across the country. In Nyeri, some parents opting to accompany their children who have now been locked out of accessing loans for higher learning, putting their academic future in limbo.
Niko devastated juu kantafuta help ama stapata juu mzazi atalipaji fees juu sina ID. Only the reason juu sina ID siwezi lipa school fees yangu, so inanisumbua up to now since January 29 sina ID.
Tulikuwa nataka kama hatapata hiyo namba ya waiting card yako nayo, si afadhali tumike kama ID kumregister kwa help ndio apate help kwa sababu sisi wazazi tunaumia.
The queues might only get longer as the High Court threw brakes on the printing of the third generation ID cards, popularly known as Maisha number. This following a case filed by a lobby group from Garissa, which argued that the government had failed to, among other things, prove the safety of the data being collected. This being the second time that the printing is running into headwinds after a similar order was issued in December 2023, only to be lifted in February this year. The back and forth now leaving thousands of Kenyans without identification cards.
Nikakuja wakaniambia nikuje after 2 weeks. Kukuja after 2 weeks, tena wananiambia ID imechelewa. Kuja after 1 month. Tena kukuja wananiambia stories juu za Maisha card. Sasa hata hiyo Maisha card tutaizana na maisha bila ID kweli.
Kwa youth kuna kitu siwezi itisha mzazi na nahitaji nijinunulie. Na hiyo pesa lazima ni hustle nipate hiyo kitu kidogo. Alafu place unaenda kutafuta kazi. Hiyo hustle unaitishwa ID. So inabidi sometimes ukose.
The government halted the printing of the second generation ID cards in November 2023 and has since phased out the system entirely. Immigration PS Julius Bitok had indicated that the National Registration Bureau had acquired a modern printer to process the third generation ID cards, which feature a microchip and will be renewed after every 10 years. Laura Otieno, Citizen TV.
Drama erupted at the Wajir County Assembly when members of the County Assembly, that's MCAs, clashed over the proposed budget for the 2024-2025 financial year. The argument quickly degenerated into a fist fight as County Assembly members fought over the mace. A section of MCAs vowed to shoot down the budget, claiming it contained numerous misplaced priorities. Here's Ben Kirui with the details of the drama.
No sooner had the Speaker of the Wajir County Assembly, escorted by the Sergeant at Arms, entered the chambers Then the chaos erupted. Members of the county assembly attacking the orderlies in an attempt to seize the maize. The commotion escalating as the sergeant-at-arms wrestled to reclaim the maize from the MCAs who outnumbered them. The conflict was sparked by the proposed 12.9 billion shillings budget for the financial year 2024-2025.
We want our budget that reflects the need of the people of Wajir. There's no one time that this budget is going to be discussed unless otherwise we will scrutinize and we will see what is there.
The standoff stemmed from a disagreement over the proposed budget, with a section of the county representatives accusing the executive of misplaced priorities.
Development programs are not allocated based on needs, but on where the government can have good kickbacks. The County Government Act mandates equitable resource sharing within a county and demands county planning that promotes this.
They also accused the governor of interfering with the House's independence in executing its mandate.
This House is an independent where we are going to advocate the right of the people of Wajir. We can't be misused. We can't be given an instruction. We can't be given an implementation by the executive.
Property of unknown value, including chairs and tables, were broken during the chaos. That's so the proceedings are suspended till further notice. Ben Kirui, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
Tonight, a political row is brewing within the governing United Democratic Alliance Party, UDA, where a faction today stormed the party headquarters and declared Joseph Halende as the new party Secretary General. The group, calling itself the UDA Founding Members Association, announced the ouster of Cleopas Malala as UDA Secretary General, claiming that Malala had abdicated his duties and was instead opposing the broad-based government. Our political affairs reporter Emmanuel Tor with more.
Joe Halende Wabwire, the chairperson of the self-styled UDA founding members, led the storming of the party headquarters along Ngong Road and declared himself the new UDA Secretary General.
And I'm here to confirm that he is no longer the Secretary General of UDA party. I, Joe Halende, will be taking over as the Secretary General of UDA party.
Halende claims he has the blessings of all the organs of the party. He accuses Malala of abandoning his duties.
He is supporting the Tawe movement. He is supporting agendas that contradict the ruling party. He has gone against our party leader.
The self-proclaimed UDA spokesperson completed his civilian coup by declaring Malala persona non grata.
Going forward, anybody who will transact business, who will do business with one Cleophas Malala, he will be doing business on his own, not as the Secretary General of UDA.
But Malala's woes may not have come as a surprise. The fiery former Kakamega senator and playwright may have ended up being a victim of his own script. His recent political maneuvers by associating himself with Trans Nzoia Governor George Natembea's Tawe movement, which has agitated for a new order, seen as an act of shooting oneself on the foot.
We issued a show cause letter to one Cleophas Malala. He frustrated the process. The party has been doing its massive grassroots recruitment and election. He has been on the forefront to frustrate the process.
The ouster move comes 8 years since the current ODM Secretary General Edwin Sifuna characteristically stormed the ODM offices, occupied the SG's office, and declared himself as the ODM Secretary General. Sifuna has remained the Secretary General since that date. Emmanuel Tor, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
All right, now the inculcation. Sustainability is at the heart of many corporate companies today. It's not just enough for them to be financially sound, it is also important for them to be sustainable as well. And Stanbic Bank is one such organization, recently launched their sustainability report focusing on a number of areas. And that is why, once again here on Power Talk, we're so pleased to be joined by Joshua Okwara, the CEO of Stanbic Bank. It's good to have you again. This time we're talking about the issue of sustainability. You've recently launched your sustainability report. Talk to us about sustainability development and why this is so important as a core strategy for Stanbic.
You know, Yvonne, thank you. This is the second year we are putting out the outcome in a scorecard. I mean, I'm very reminded that the world requires much more impact from institutions and businesses especially. And if you look across the world, smaller enterprises, young generations, they're seeking for more accountability, environmental friendly policies, and social governance. And those issues is largely what you're trying to do in our ESG principles. So what we've done this year is to kind of deep down on what you're trying to achieve. And I'll just summarize in maybe just 3 areas. Job creation and enterprise development remains a real challenge and a catalyst for our market. We're looking at investing more in infrastructure and enhancing our just energy transitions by becoming much more green, and you will see the numbers much later. We're building much more climate resilience investments and funding from the bank perspective, and then enhancing financial inclusion through the empowerment and training we do for either human enterprises, women entrepreneurs. We disbursed 20 billion shillings to those businesses over time. So those 4 pillars is largely what you're committed to continue accelerating the medium term.
And sustainability is important. I mean, I think we've talked about this beyond the numbers that a company is able to give and the profits that it's able to give to its shareholders. Why is sustainability in general, not just for Stanbic, an important aspect for the private sector?
You can see it now over the years. But the companies that actually spend more time impacting communities, working with the various stakeholders, just beyond your shareholder, and being able to collaborate with them to co-create. So we call it shared value. That creates every single person wins. Remember that in our SDGs, our ambition is that no one is left behind. So in the last 20 years, companies that focused one lens, your financial performance lens, I can assure you, you don't see them today, globally.
Let's double down now on the areas that you have mentioned for Stanbic, particularly enterprise growth, job creation. Why is that important?
Correct. So just look at today where we are. The challenges we have, one of the things we speak about in our market is we are the youngest continent. You know what is caring actually, Yvonne, is we're becoming younger as a country. Average age is now becoming lower than 19. Which means that you need more jobs, more opportunities, and the bigger businesses of tomorrow. So we're training our small entrepreneurs. Just today's launch, we had 14 young businesses that we provided seed capital each of $50,000 from different parts of Kenya. Most of them were Gen Zs. The energy and the enthusiasm was great. If they create 30 jobs for those 14, it's almost 1,000 jobs. Yeah, and these are real jobs for these individuals we created. And number 2, for businesses, if you think about trade, regional corridors, the businesses we create, those small businesses, especially the SMEs and micro enterprises, you create more of the opportunities for growing their businesses and creating the jobs. For me, I believe that that is the single catalyst the economy will need. And our disbursement for this segment has been around about 97 billion shillings in the last year. And that's significant. If you think about the full value chain, lending in that sector today is around 18 to 20% of the full industry. And we're happy to have contributed 97 billion of that.
Yeah, and you want to focus as well on the SME sector.
Correct.
Yeah.
And the reason for it, and you see us much investing into it over time, is we have got close to 7.5 million smaller businesses. Even in the next couple of years, the largest business in our country and the region will be the smaller SMEs today. And we just have to look at bigger brands over the last decade. Sometimes we don't see long-term. You see, sustainability must be about investing today some resources to enable those companies to be able to succeed and link them to market as well. So biggest exporters to East Africa region, most of them are our clients. How do we build the small enterprises to be able to progress? We've also had a lot of support of women entrepreneurs. Yeah, our data proposition, we put in resources for 20 billion shillings of disbursements. We intend in the next 3 to 4 years to achieve, next 4 years and 5 years to achieve 5 million young entrepreneurs, and most of these are women-linked, women-led or women-run enterprises.
Partnerships, obviously, you know, the area of sustainability is not something that one organization can do on its own. How important is that, and what do you think has been the impact of that for Stanbic in terms of pursuing these partnerships towards sustainability?
I mean, this is where it comes. There's a great convergence in how you build enterprise. It's not just sustainability, but you know, because the organization is largely an organization with many different facets. We have to deal with governments in one way. We have to deal with partners, our suppliers, our clients, our staff, the communities we are working with, and as well as the region. So one of the greatest partnerships we had is the USADF, which is the partnership we launched today with funding we're providing smaller businesses. We work with the GIZ, for instance, which we're working with very closely. We have a program that is running today with the Melinda, the Gates Foundation as well. So my answer to you is that is, without that different lenses, you can't be able to succeed. Number two, you create more resources and more firepower. So across the industry, not just for us, the banking sector, the technology sector, how do we build? Today we had a great engagement with the ministry, the principal secretary who came in today from the Ministry of Industrializations, and investment promotion. You can see how those enterprises can catalyze and grow across the region. So for me, without partnership, in fact, we're very interconnected when we think about the value we create. And I give you a great example. A small micro enterprises today who is supplying, let's say, I think we have some fish farmers today from Kisumu. If you are able to do the fingerlings and supply them to medium enterprises which are able to do your fish, and you're able to supply your hospitality sector or your hotel sector, and they are going for export. I mean, this is a complete chain, and that's how you build a transformation in society and value for the bank and for our clients.
Yeah, so it's not just the financial sector looking inward and in and of itself, you know, even as an organization to say, okay, we're pursuing the sustainability journey, but we're doing it on our own. Do you get a sense that there is competition in that space? You know, organizations competing against each other in the space of sustainability
I would say, Yvonne, in my view, we're not doing a lot of that. That is what is actually lacking. I mean, people talk about competition, right? How do you bring in your strengths? I mean, and really let's think about sectors like agriculture today. I'll give you some data points across the industry. In agriculture, that total lending portfolio is around 3 to 4%. This is 27% of our economy, Yvonne. If you're intervening at 3-4% from a lending perspective, and the industry is contributing 27%, my answer to you is that we're not even scratching the surface. So how do we find partnerships that can de-risk, for instance, lending to that segment? And remember, agriculture hires more than 80% of our people in Kenya today. So we have to bridge the gap. And the only way to build that is to provide more resources, get more partnerships, working with government, research institutions, and we have to use more technology and science. So if you give me a good example, like if you're a farmer, I mean, I grew up as a small-scale farmer with my parents in the highlands. If you're using the same seed, using the same fertilizer without knowing the weather patterns, not monitoring your temperatures, naturally your productivity will go down, your yields will go down, isn't it? Yet you need to use science. And that's the partnership I'm going to talk about it. And trade is another segment I believe will uplift the economy of Kenya by enhancing SME and micro enterprises financing. So those will be the two areas I say will intervene on.
Yeah, and you talk about, you know, investing now towards growing them. And I think it's interesting that you talked about perhaps those who are in the SME sector today. The idea is to help them grow and become even bigger. How much of that is important in terms of the lens of sustainability, you know, looking forward and investing in now? You know, you've mentioned agriculture and the SME sector. What are the other sectors that you see ripe for investment today that will reap the benefit in the medium to long term?
Yvonne, this is perhaps one of the most consequential conversations you can have in this decade. So today we spend so much time focusing about the short term. Everyone wants returns tomorrow. Yeah, and I can assure you what perhaps we need to have a reset in our conversation is what does the next 10 years look like? Yeah, I mean, not just Vision 2030, which was now, you know, we have a few years to go, but it was set up more than 20 years ago. Yeah, the conversations we need to drive much more, and Stanbic is driving, is can we have a lens of 10, 20 years? And very few of us, unfortunately, have that lens. We are very impatient. The humility and grace has disappeared. So manufacturing is a good example. Massive opportunity for us to become export-oriented in the region. Today, it's less than 7-8% of our GDP. And for us to really make impact and scale, it needs to be 15% of our GDP. We can lend to that segment, right? Yeah. We can provide credit to that segment. That's where SMEs come in. But you can see it's been dropping over years to years. Energy is another area we're investing significantly. So not just transition to green energy, but affordable energy, where we're putting a lot of resources through solar, through wind investment in the market. And then obviously you have to think about, so those are the sectors I would say: energy, industrializations, manufacturing, and then trade, and then agriculture. So my view is, and I've looked at a few businesses, if you think about Kenya and the region, smaller businesses of today, Yvonne, could become your bigger millionaire businesses and potentially the billionaire businesses for the next 10 years.
And where do you see Stanbic in all of this?
So we are excited as a bank because we are interconnected already. This conversation we're having today, Yvonne, you can have it in Luanda, in Angola today. You can have it in Lilongwe or even Lusaka. Same conversations. Our problems of the continent are very much similar. And so what we see is, if you think about our commitment of growth across the region, we want to become much more significant, building businesses for small, medium enterprises as priority, investing in infrastructure and trade as well, to be able to bring resources for them. And that's what Stanbic should be, a partner for those businesses, for enterprises, for governments, and for communities to scale.
Well, thank you very much for that. That's been our conversation with Dr. Joshua Okwara, the Chief Executive of Stanbic Bank Kenya and South Sudan, here on Power Talk. That's Power Talk for the Explainer this week. Another edition coming your way very, very soon. Always a pleasure speaking to Dr. Joshua Okwara. Let's take a look at other news-making headlines on the program tonight. A petitioner has moved to the High Court in Nairobi seeking orders to stop the India-based Adani Airport Holdings Limited from inking a close to 260 billion shillings deal to renovate the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. The petitioner, Isaac Lango Guyo, has asked the court to declare the entire transaction unconstitutional, null and void for failing to adhere to the principles of transparency, accountability and public participation. The petition also raised questions as to why the government opted for a privately initiated project instead of a competitive bidding process, saying the move opened room for corruption. In a statement, Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi dismissed reports that the government had signed a deal with the group, adding that the current financial distress in the country had forced the government to acquire the support of a private investor to the tune of 260 billion shillings. This week's Shabiki jackpot winners are Agnes Mbigiwe and John Mwangi. The two have both won 113,457 shillings each and are saying they will use the money to expand their businesses. Mbigiwe and Mwangi won after predicting 12 out of 15 matches correctly. Shabiki Jackpot continues to award huge bonuses to winners who predict 12, 13 and 14 matches correctly. The jackpot is progressive, meaning that if there is no winner for the week, the amount increases every week. The jackpot now stands at 10,207,564. To play, visit shabiki.com.
Mimi pia nimeamini Shabiki ni ya kweli. Naweza ambia Wakenya wenzangu washiriki kwenye Shabiki, wacheze, ni mchezo wa ukweli. Nimejishindia bonus ya super jackpot.
Pesa yenye nimeshinda
59.
The East African Breweries Limited profit after tax dropped by 12% to 10.9 billion shillings in the full year ending June 30th, 2024. The brewer's earnings were weighed down by interest payments, rising inflation, shilling devaluation, social unrest and floods. This being a drop from 12.32 billion shillings registered in the full year ending June 30th, 2023. And as Jimmy Mbogo now reports, the brewer saw a slight growth in volume at 1%, while the cost of operations grew by 18% in the same period.
By our chairman just giving us a number.
For the East Africa Breweries Limited, 2024 can only be described as a year with mixed fortunes, characterized by a significant bag of challenges as well as remarkable achievements. EABL management noting that the year, which ended on June 30th, was characterized by volatility in the East Africa region and a significant fluctuation of the exchange rate. A cocktail of challenges that saw the brewers' earning after tax drop by 12% from 12.3 billion shillings in 2023 to close the year at 10.9 billion shillings. The drop in earnings came on the backdrop of an increase in volume, which grew by 1%. The brewer also saw an increase in net sales, which went up 13% to stand at 124.1 billion shillings, while the operating profit also grew by 10% to 28.8 billion shillings.
But our consumer therefore continues to be impacted by pressure from a spend perspective. So when we look at the share of wallet competition between different stuff that a consumer has to do, we are finding our category shrinking. And therefore they're having to reprioritize what they need to spend on.
We did feel the impact of fuel price increases of about 14% impacting our distribution costs. We continue to feel some pressure, although reduced, on ethanol pricing at 17% up year on year. Sugar was another headwind at about 26% growth in cost, and glass at about 7%. So you can see the pressure on our cost of sales.
In the year under review, EABL registered growth in all three markets, with Kenya leading at 15%, an equivalent of 65% of the group's total earning, followed by Uganda at 12%, which accounted for 21% of EABL's total revenue, while Tanzania had a 9% growth, translating to 14% of the company's earning. In products, EABL saw a 13% increase in premium products, with beers coming in second at 12% and 10% for mainstream spirits.
I think from a commercial execution, I think we believe in FMCG must be available within arm's length wherever you are. So really driving availability using current old channels as well as emerging new channels so that our brands are accessible to you. We're also winning at point of sale. If you go to supermarkets or in some outlets, I think there's great execution.
To reduce their carbon footprint, EABL says through its Rudisha campaign, it has collected over 17 million bottles for recycling. The brewery is also set to make further investments to reduce their operational cost, which had grown by 18%, an issue that they say can be mitigated through investment. In the year under review, the shareholders will be smiling all the way to the bank with a 7 shillings per share dividend payout. Jimmy Mbogo, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
The property market proved its resilience in quarter 2 of 2024, with prices inching up for the 8th straight quarter. The just released Has Property Index indicates that while satellite towns like Juja and Ruiru enjoyed notable growth, the city's suburbs faced a marginal dip in property sale prices. Rental prices remained relatively stable, indicative of cautious property owners amid the rising cost of living. Meanwhile, land prices surged, with suburbs and satellite towns both seeing some significant gains. Jasmine Wamboi brings us the details.
The property sale market demonstrated continued resilience in the second quarter of 2024, with overall property sale prices rising by 1%. This growth, while slower than the previous quarter's 2.7%, marks the 8th consecutive period of price increases, highlighting a trend of stability in the property market. Nairobi's satellite towns, including Juja, Ruiru, Thika and Rongai, led the charge in the property price increases, showing a notable 2.1% rise. This growth contrasting with a marginal decline of 0.9% observed in the city's suburbs like Spring Valley, Kileleshwa and Kilimani. Despite this regional fluctuations, the overall market has managed to maintain a steady course, defying high interest rates and a strengthened shilling, which more often than not negatively impacts foreign buyers. The rental market has remained relatively stable, with rental prices increasing minimally by 0.01% during the quarter. The House Property Index indicates that property owners are cautious about raising rents to retain tenants amid higher taxes and inflation, translating into subdued consumer expenditure. Rental yields exhibiting a distinct regional disparity, with the suburbs offering higher yields at 7% compared to the 4.8% in the satellite towns. Land prices showed a steady increase for the second quarter of the year, despite increasing input costs for developers. Prices in the suburbs rose by 1.8% per acre, reaching over 200 million shillings. Lavington and Spring Valley led the suburbs with gains of 4% and 3.8%, while Kileleshwa saw a minor decline. Satellite towns saw even stronger growth, with land prices up 3% this quarter, with Kiserian, Limuru and Rongai leading the charge. The index indicates that satellite towns are now poised to overtake government treasury bills in annual returns. Jasmine Wamboi, Citizen TV.
The Edible Oil Manufacturers Association of Kenya is tonight warning of a serious economic crisis that will result in job losses as a result of high cost of production following the introduction of a 10% import duty on crude oil. Addressing the press in Nairobi, members of the Edible Oil Manufacturing umbrella body, led by former Mandera Senator Bill Okwara, said the significant increase in the price of cooking oil will affect millions of Kenyan consumers who will have to endure a staggering 36% taxation on vegetable oils.
So for all the imports that have come in from 1st of July, we are now paying 10% more. So we're paying up to 32% really on the cost of the value of the import of these products. You know, this is really surprising because there was no engagement, there was no discussion by the government with the industry. You know, when you, it's one of the challenges of this government that they do not engage industry at all. They do not engage, you know, with manufacturers, with with the stakeholders or people who are, because you need to plan. Businesses need to plan. They need to, you need to prepare for finances, for cash flow, for investment. But the way the government just wakes up and today you gazette and tomorrow you start paying taxes. Already when Kenyans were complaining, the tax is too high. So the impact of this thing is obviously the demand will go down. It's affecting already our factories. Let me tell you, on average, we're operating